Section 20 of the Expedition of Humphry Clinker. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Deborah Lynn. The Expedition of Humphry Clinker by Tobias Smollett. Section 20. To Dr. Lewis. Dear Dick, I have done with the waters. Therefore your advice comes a day too late. I grant that physic is no mystery of your making. I know it is a mystery in its own nature, and like other mysteries, requires a strong gulp of faith to make it go down. 2 days ago I went into the King's Bath, by the advice of our French, in order to clear the strainer of the skin, for the benefit of a free perspiration, and the first object that saluted my eye was a child full of scrofulous ulcers, carried in the arms of one of the guides, under the very noses of the bathers. I was so shocked at the sight that I retired immediately with indignation and disgust. Suppose the matter of those ulcers, floating on the water, comes in contact with my skin, when the pores are all open. I would ask you what must be the consequence. Good heaven, the very thought makes my blood run cold. We know not what sores may be running into the water while we are bathing, and what sort of matter we may thus imbibe. The king's evil, the scurvy, the cancer, and the pox, and no doubt the heat will render the virus more volatile and penetrating. To purify myself from all such contamination, I went to the Duke of Kingston's private bath, and there I was almost suffocated for want of free air, the place was so small and the steam so stifling. After all, if the intention is no more than to wash the skin, I am convinced that simple element is more effectual than any water impregnated with salt and iron, which, being astringent, will certainly contract the pores, and leave a kind of crust upon the surface of the body. But I am now as much afraid of drinking as of bathing, for after a long conversation with the doctor about the construction of the pump and the cistern, it is very far from being clear with me that the patients in the pump room don't swallow the scourings of the bathers. I can't help suspecting that there is, or may be, some regurgitation from the bath into the cistern of the pump. In that case, what a delicate beverage is every day quaffed by the drinkers, medicated with the sweat and dirt and dandruff, and the abominable discharges of various kinds from 20 different diseased bodies parboiling in the kettle below. In order to avoid this filthy composition, I had recourse to the spring that supplies the private baths on the Abbey Green. But I at once perceived something extraordinary in the taste and smell, and upon inquiry I find that the Roman baths in this quarter were found covered by an old burying ground belonging to the Abbey, through which, in all probability, the water drains in its passage; so that as we drink the decoction of living bodies at the pump room, we swallow the strainings of rotten bones and carcasses at the private bath. I vow to God the very idea turns my stomach. Determined as I am against any farther use of the Bath waters, this consideration would give me little disturbance, if I could find anything more pure or less pernicious to quench my thirst. But although the natural springs of excellent water are seen gushing spontaneous on every side, from the hills that surround us, the inhabitants in general make use of well water, so impregnated with nitre or alum, or some other villainous mineral, that it is equally ungrateful to the taste and mischievous to the constitution. It must be owned, indeed, that here in Milsham Street we have a precarious and scanty supply from the hill, which is collected in an open basin in the Circus, liable to be defiled with dead dogs, cats, rats, and every species of nastiness, which the rascally populace may throw into it, from mere wantonness and brutality. Well, there is no nation that drinks so hoggishly as the English. What passes for wine among us is not the juice of the grape. It is an adulterous mixture, brewed up of nauseous ingredients by dunces, who are bunglers in the art of poison making; and yet we and our forefathers are and have been poisoned by this cursed drench, without taste or flavour. The only genuine and wholesome beverage in England is London porter and Dorchester table beer; but as for your ale and your gin, your cider and your perry, and all the trashy family of made wines, I detest them as infernal compositions, contrived for the destruction of the human species. But what have I to do with the human species? Except a very few friends, I care not if the whole was blank. Hark ye, Lewis, my misanthropy increases every day. The longer I live, I find the folly and the fraud of mankind grow more and more intolerable. I wish I had not come from Brambleton Hall. After having lived in solitude so long, I cannot bear the hurry and impertinence of the multitude. Besides, everything is sophisticated in these crowded places. Snares are laid for our lives in everything we eat or drink. The very air we breathe is loaded with contagion. We cannot even sleep without risk of infection. I say infection. This place is the rendezvous of the diseased. You won't deny that many diseases are infectious. Even the consumption itself is highly infectious. When a person dies of it in Italy, the bed and bedding are destroyed. The other furniture is exposed to the weather, and the apartment whitewashed before it is occupied by any other living soul. You'll allow that nothing receives infection sooner, or retains it longer, than blankets, feather beds, and mattresses. 'Sdeath! How do I know what miserable objects have been stewing in the bed where I now lie? I wonder, Dick, you did not put me in mind of sending for my own mattresses. But if I had not been an ass, I should not have needed a remembrancer. There is always some plaguy reflection that rises up in judgment against me, and ruffles my spirits. Therefore let us change the subject. I have other reasons for abridging my stay at Bath. You know sister Tabby's complexion. If Mrs. Tabitha Bramble had been of any other race, I should certainly have considered her as the most blank. But the truth is, she has found means to interest my affection, or rather she is beholden to the force of prejudice, commonly called the ties of blood. Well, this amiable maiden has actually commenced a flirting correspondence with an Irish baronet of 65. His name is Sir Ulic Mackilligut. He is said to be much out at elbows, and, I believe, has received false intelligence with respect to her fortune. Be that as it may, the connection is exceedingly ridiculous, and begins already to excite whispers. For my part, I have no intention to dispute her free agency, though I shall fall upon some expedient to undeceive her paramour as to the point which he has principally in view. But I don't think her conduct is a proper example for Liddy, who has also attracted the notice of some coxcombs in the rooms, and Jerry tells me he suspects a strapping fellow, the knight's nephew, of some design upon the girl's heart. I shall, therefore, keep a strict eye over her aunt and her, and even shift the scene if I find the matter grow more serious. You perceive what an agreeable task it must be to a man of my kidney to have the cure of such souls as these. But hold, you shall not have another peevish word till the next occasion. From yours, Mat Bramble, Bath, April 28. End of Section 20.